The sound of a hand slamming across the polished hood of a bright red Ferrari echoed through the corporate parking lot so loudly that everyone stopped walking. A deep scratch stretched across the flawless paint, and before anyone could even understand what had happened, a single father carrying a worn lunch bag found himself standing at the center of furious accusations. Within minutes, security guards surrounded him, employees whispered cruel assumptions, and the company's powerful CEO fired him on the spot without listening to a single word of his explanation. What no one realized was that the parking lot cameras had quietly captured every second of the truth, and before the afternoon was over, the real culprit would destroy far more than a luxury car. They would expose the dangerous cost of judging an innocent man. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our community. Graham Mercer had never expected life to become so heavy before turning 40. 3 years earlier he had buried his wife after a sudden illness that left both him and his 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, trying to understand how laughter could disappear from a home overnight. Since then every sunrise began the same way. Graham prepared breakfast, braided Hazel's messy blonde hair after watching countless tutorial videos, packed her school lunch with little handwritten notes of encouragement, and then hurried to work before the morning traffic swallowed the city. Every dollar mattered. Every minute mattered even more. His greatest fear was not poverty. It was disappointing the little girl who still believed her father could fix everything. Graham worked as a maintenance supervisor for Sterling Dynamics, one of the largest technology companies in the state. The position wasn't glamorous, but he took pride in making sure every office, hallway, and conference room reflected the same care he gave his own home. He believed that dignity was measured by effort, not by job titles. The company's CEO, Veronica Ashcroft, believed something very different. Veronica had built Sterling Dynamics into a billion-dollar business through relentless discipline and impossible expectations. Investors admired her confidence. Business magazines celebrated her achievements. Employees respected her intelligence but feared her temper. She demanded perfection from everyone around her, especially when it came to appearances. Her limited-edition Ferrari had become a symbol of her success, polished daily and parked in the executive section where everyone could admire it. That Wednesday morning the headquarters buzzed with excitement because important investors were arriving for a major presentation. Employees rushed across the campus carrying laptops, reports, and coffee cups while Graham quietly repaired a broken sprinkler valve near the executive parking area. Water from the damaged pipe had begun soaking the flower beds, and he wanted everything repaired before the guests arrived. As he finished tightening the final connection, he heard angry footsteps racing toward him. Veronica froze beside her Ferrari. A fresh scratch stretched from the front fender toward the driver's door. Her face turned pale before burning bright red with rage. Without asking questions, she looked around and immediately noticed Graham kneeling nearby with his toolbox resting beside the vehicle. To her, the conclusion seemed obvious. Within seconds she accused him of damaging her prized car while working around the parking lot. Graham stood slowly, confused and genuinely shocked. He calmly explained that he had been repairing the sprinkler several feet away and had never touched the Ferrari. His toolbox had remained beside the flower bed the entire time. Very few people listened. The growing crowd saw an ordinary maintenance worker standing beside an expensive sports car owned by the company's demanding CEO. Human nature filled in the missing pieces before facts ever could. Veronica's frustration exploded into public humiliation. She declared that carelessness had consequences and announced that Graham was terminated immediately. Human Resources would process the paperwork before lunch. The words hit Graham harder than any physical blow. He tried one last time to explain that he was innocent. He thought about Hazel waiting after school. He thought about the rent due next week. He thought about the promise he had made at his wife's bedside that their daughter would always feel safe. Yet none of those thoughts mattered to the woman who had already turned away. Employees quietly watched Graham gather his worn lunch bag and toolbox. Some looked embarrassed. Others simply avoided eye contact. A few even whispered that people in lower-paying jobs should stay away from expensive cars. Graham walked toward the exit with tears threatening to escape, but he refused to let them fall. Meanwhile, inside the security office, a veteran security supervisor named Roland Pierce reviewed routine parking lot footage before deleting the morning recordings for storage. Roland had worked security for nearly 25 years. Experience had taught him that loud accusations often hid quiet truths. As he watched the camera overlooking the executive parking area, something immediately caught his attention. The footage clearly showed Graham working beside the sprinkler several yards away. Several minutes later, another employee, Senior Marketing Director Bryce Holden, hurried through the parking lot while staring at his phone instead of watching where he was going. Carrying an oversized aluminum presentation case, Bryce squeezed between two parked vehicles. The sharp metal corner scraped directly across Veronica's Ferrari before he even noticed what had happened. Bryce stopped. He stared at the scratch. He looked around nervously. Seeing no one watching, he quietly wiped the dust away with his sleeve, quickly parked farther down the lot, and disappeared into the building without reporting the accident. Minutes later, Veronica arrived and discovered the damage. Roland replayed the footage twice. Then a third time. His jaw tightened. An innocent man had just lost his job because someone else lacked the courage to admit a mistake. Roland immediately saved multiple copies of the recording before walking directly toward the executive boardroom where Veronica prepared for the investor meeting. Inside, executives discussed revenue forecasts while investors reviewed presentation packets. Roland politely interrupted. Veronica looked irritated. She insisted the meeting could not be delayed. Roland calmly replied that waiting even 5 more minutes would become the biggest mistake the company had made all year. The confidence in his voice silenced the room. The video appeared on the large conference screen. Everyone watched. The room became painfully quiet. Every executive witnessed Bryce accidentally scraping the Ferrari. Every executive watched him conceal the damage and walk away. Every executive also remembered Graham being fired without evidence. Veronica's confident posture slowly collapsed. For perhaps the first time in years, she realized she had mistaken authority for wisdom. Bryce's face turned completely white. His attempts to explain only made matters worse. He admitted he had panicked because the investor meeting was too important and feared losing his own position. Instead of confessing, he allowed another employee to carry the blame. The investors exchanged uncomfortable glances. One elderly investor finally spoke with remarkable honesty. He quietly remarked that damaged paint could be repaired, but damaged character often required much longer. Those words settled heavily across the room. Veronica immediately instructed human resources to locate Graham before he left the property. But he was already gone. He had walked nearly 2 miles carrying his toolbox because he wanted to save bus fare. Roland volunteered to find him. Nearly 30 minutes later, he spotted Graham sitting alone on a small park bench across from Hazel's elementary school. Graham wasn't crying for himself. He was trying to figure out how to explain unemployment to a little girl who still believed everything would somehow be okay. Roland sat beside him and shared the truth. At first, Graham simply stared ahead. Not because he felt victorious. Because he felt exhausted. Being proven innocent could never erase the humiliation he had already experienced. Back at Sterling Dynamics, Veronica canceled the remainder of her investor schedule. For the first time in many years, profit no longer seemed like the most urgent issue. She personally drove to the park. There was no crowd. No cameras. No public relations team. Only a woman finally confronting the consequences of her own pride. She apologized without excuses. She admitted that she had judged a hard-working father based on assumptions instead of facts. She confessed that her obsession with perfection had blinded her to fairness. She offered Graham his job back immediately along with a promotion, higher salary, full educational benefits for Hazel, and a formal public apology before every employee. Graham listened quietly. Forgiveness did not come easily. The embarrassment had been real. The fear had been real. Hazel's future had nearly changed forever because one powerful person refused to ask a simple question before making a life-changing decision. Still, Graham remembered something his late wife often said. Bitterness keeps yesterday alive. Forgiveness gives tomorrow a chance. The following afternoon every employee gathered inside the company auditorium. No one expected what happened next. Veronica stepped onto the stage without prepared remarks. She admitted every mistake publicly. She accepted complete responsibility. She explained how easy it was to confuse position with wisdom and speed with justice. She announced Graham's promotion to facilities operations manager and introduced a new company policy requiring complete investigations before any disciplinary action involving employees. Then she invited Graham onto the stage. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Many employees who had remained silent the previous day now lowered their heads in shame. Some later apologized personally for assuming the worst instead of offering support. Even Bryce approached Graham. His eyes filled with regret unlike anything money could erase. He admitted that cowardice had nearly destroyed another father's life. He accepted the disciplinary consequences imposed by the company and sincerely apologized without asking for sympathy. Graham looked at him for a long moment. Then he offered a handshake. Not because Bryce deserved instant forgiveness, but because Graham refused to become the kind of person whose heart remained trapped inside someone else's mistake. Months passed. Sterling dynamics slowly changed. Managers received leadership training focused on empathy, fairness, and listening before judging. Employees noticed something unexpected. Productivity improved. Trust increased. People stopped hiding mistakes because they knew honesty would be respected. The company became stronger not because its technology changed, but because its culture finally did. Hazel noticed changes too. Her father smiled more often. He no longer worried every evening about unexpected bills. One Saturday afternoon she proudly visited his office, where employees greeted her warmly. She looked at the framed certificate recognizing Graham's integrity and quietly whispered that her mother would have been proud. Those simple words meant more to Graham than every promotion, every paycheck, and every award combined. He realized that true success had never been about proving powerful people wrong. It had always been about remaining the kind of father his daughter could admire, even during life's most painful moments. Before we reach the end of this story, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever seen someone judged too quickly, or have you experienced the pain of being falsely blamed? Please leave a meaningful comment sharing the lesson you believe people should remember after hearing Graham's journey. Years later, visitors entering Sterling Dynamics noticed a small bronze plaque mounted near the executive entrance. It did not mention luxury cars, famous investors, or billion-dollar achievements. Instead, it carried a simple reminder that every employee read before walking inside: justice begins with listening. Character begins with compassion. Veronica often paused in front of those words before starting each workday. The scratch on her Ferrari had disappeared long ago, but she chose never to forget the invisible scar left on an innocent father's heart. That memory transformed her into a wiser leader, and it reminded everyone that the greatest measure of success is not how quickly we judge, but how courageously we correct our mistakes when the truth finally comes to light. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that kindness costs nothing, fairness protects everyone, and a single act of compassion can change a life forever.